Okay, imagine this. You step into a fully immersive digital world. Maybe you meet a lifelike Marilyn Monroe avatar, or you explore a virtual 1950s Hollywood and she's your guide. Sounds like pure science fiction, right? Straight out of a movie.
It really does.
But, this isn't some far-off fantasy anymore. It's actually becoming a tangible possibility right now within what everyone's calling the metaverse. So today, that's what our Deep Dives is all about. We're navigating this really fascinating new digital frontier, specifically looking at it through the lens of cultural icons like Marilyn Monroe.
That's a great way to frame it.
Our mission really is to unpack what the metaverse actually is.
Yeah.
How are these, digital resurrections happening? And maybe most importantly, what are the big social and ethical questions that pop up? Things about identity, consent, privacy. It's a lot. We've pulled together quite a stack of sources for this, speculative articles, some deep research on the tech itself, expert opinions on digital identity, celebrity, all that virtual age stuff. We're talking about possibilities that, sound futuristic, but they're happening fast. But maybe before we jump into Marilyn specifically, what exactly is this metaverse we keep hearing about? Our sources call it the next evolution of the internet.
Yeah, that's a good starting point. Fundamentally, you can think of the metaverse as a network, right? A network of interconnected digital spaces.
Right.
And in these spaces, people interact in real time, usually through avatars. And the key thing is it blends physical and virtual reality to create these really immersive worlds.
Immersive worlds.
Exactly. And another critical aspect, it's persistent. Your identity, the things you own digitally, your progress. It all carries over between different experiences. You're building a continuous digital life. Sort of.
Okay, persistent. That's interesting. And looking at the research, there seem to be some really distinctive features setting it apart from just, browsing websites. First off, these immersive digital spaces you mentioned, we're not just talking flat screens here. These are like 3D environments using VR and AR tech.
Precisely. VR, augmented reality. They create this powerful sense of presence. You really feel like you're there, walking through a virtual city, at a digital concert, maybe even, stepping into a simulated 1950s Hollywood.
Wow. Okay. And then you mentioned persistent identity. So I have an avatar, my digital self, and that persona sticks with me across different platforms.
That's the idea. You remain you in that continuous sense. But you also get this freedom, customize your look, express different sides of yourself, maybe even, like you said, step into Marilyn's shoes for a night, virtually.
Right. But it's not just about hanging out, is it? Our sources talk a lot about digital economies within these worlds.
Oh, absolutely. That's a huge piece. These virtual worlds are developing their own pretty robust economies.
How does that work?
Well, users are buying, selling, owning digital goods. And often this is underpinned by things like blockchain tech, NFTs, non-fungible tokens.
Okay, NFTs. So give me an example, maybe with Marilyn.
Sure. You could potentially buy a digital collectible, say an NFT of Marilyn's iconic white dress. Or maybe a virtual ticket to some exclusive Marilyn-themed VR experience.
And these digital things have real value.
They certainly can. That's what's fascinating. It challenges our old ideas of ownership, doesn't it? Turning data into something tangible, sometimes highly valuable. It's a whole new economic landscape opening up.
A new economic landscape.
Yeah. And driving all this, you have these foundational technologies coming together. You've got the VR and AR for immersion, obviously.
Right.
Then artificial intelligence, AI, is crucial for making things feel alive. Intelligent characters, personalized content, and blockchain, as we said, for proving you own those digital assets, making transactions secure and transparent. It's this convergence that's creating something genuinely new.
Okay, so that's the stage. Now, this is where it gets, for me, incredibly interesting. How is someone like Marilyn Monroe, this timeless icon, actually being, projected into this future using all this tech?
It's happening right now, actually. We're seeing the debut of what's being called Digital Marilyn.
Digital Marilyn.
Yeah, it's an AI-driven avatar developed by a company called Soul Machines and, importantly, in partnership with Monroe's estate. It premiered at South by Southwest SXSW in 2024.
So what is it? A hologram?
No, that's the key difference. It's not static, not just an image. It's designed as an interactive persona. The idea is you can genuinely chat with her. You hear her respond, hopefully, with her voice, her charm. Soul Machines actually called it a conversation across time.
A conversation across time? How did they even do that?
They used something they call biological AI. Essentially, they trained the AI extensively on her films, her interviews, personal writings, everything they could get, trying to mimic her behavior, her voice patterns, expressions, the whole package.
That's kind of mind-blowing, an interactive AI Marilyn.
Yeah.
But I mean, how real is interactive? Is it just like a fancy chatbot answering questions? Or does this biological AI, as they call it, actually capture her wit, her timing, in a real conversation?
Well, the goal, according to Soul Machines, is definitely beyond just basic Q&A. The AI is designed to learn from interactions, to personalize its responses. They're aiming for that nuance, that specific charm she had.
Cool.
And crucially, this whole thing had the blessing of Authentic Brands Group ADG. They manage her estate.
Right. Consent is a big piece here.
Exactly. And ABG's stated goal is clear. They want to honor her enduring spirit, allow for deeper fan engagement. They're very explicit that it's not about replacing her.
Okay.
In fact, the CEO of Soul Machines, Greg Cross, he put it very directly. He said, "Our technology is never used to replace entertainers. We partnered directly with their estates to ensure it is a true partnership that is approved by and benefits the artists."
That's an important distinction. So besides this direct AI chat, are there other kinds of experiences popping up for fans?
Yeah, looking ahead, there are actual plans for a traveling immersive exhibit. It's time for Marilyn's 100th birthday in 2026.
An exhibit? What kind?
Well, the idea is visitors will use VR and AR tech to, and I'm quoting here, interact and speak directly to Marilyn through the use of AI and 3D photography. So it's this blend, right? Physical space, digital interaction, a new way to experience that nostalgia.
Interesting. And tying this back to those digital economies we talked about.
Yeah.
What about collectibles? Is her legacy, tokenized?
Oh, definitely. The virtual collectible space around her is already quite active. Back in 2022, some rare Marilyn photos were released as NFTs. Then in 2023, her estate launched something called Modern Muse. It was an NFT art collaboration, sort of reimagining her image.
So fans can own digital pieces of her.
Exactly. They become, as some put it, curators of her digital legacy, displaying these items, maybe trading them in virtual spaces. It's like collecting posters or memorabilia, but evolved for this new digital format. It's monetizing nostalgia in a very 21st century way.
So putting it all together, for a fan, this could mean virtually attending a premiere, owning digital bits of her history, maybe even having Marilyn as a kind of personal AI assistant.
Potentially, yeah.
It really feels like that gap between, say, 2025 and 1955 just collapsing.
Right.
Which is incredibly exciting, but, I mean, it has to lead us to some big questions around ethics and identity, doesn't it?
Absolutely. That's the unavoidable next step in the conversation.
This whole virtual frontier, it's undeniably exciting, no question. But, reading through our sources, there's this strong, consistent emphasis on needing to tread carefully.
Yeah.
Especially when we're talking about real people, our identities, our rights within these new spaces.
That's right. And a really crucial point centers on identity and representation. The metaverse offers this amazing freedom, right? You can appear as anyone or anything through your avatar. But that immediately throws up some tricky questions. Is it always okay to, wear the image of a real person, especially someone iconic?
Yeah, where's the line?
Exactly. Some sources even bring up concerns about impersonating an icon crossing into disrespect, or even what some have termed digital blackface, if it's done insensitively, if it trivializes or misrepresents who they were. Professor Cian Hawthorne, who looks into philosophy, race, gender, she notes just how complicated these questions get. And Matthew Ball, who writes a lot about the metaverse, he makes a great point. The metaverse doesn't invent these issues, but it definitely intensifies existing real-world concerns about rights and respect.
Right. It magnifies them.
It really does. Even folks high up at places like Epic Games are asking, how do you build this new internet, but in a healthier and safer way?
Which leads us, I guess, to maybe the deepest, most complex issue here. Digital resurrection and consent.
Ah, yes. This is a major moral gray zone.
Can someone who's passed away meaningfully consent to being digitally recreated like this? I mean, Marilyn herself, she obviously never imagined an AI clone.
Of course not. And while her estate holds the legal rights and they approve the Digital Marilyn project, you're right, the underlying concept makes a lot of people uncomfortable. There's a tech commentator, Chris Ruby, who warns pretty starkly that AI-induced digital resurrection poses legal and ethical concerns. She even asks, kind of provocatively, if no one will ever rest in peace again, or if we'll end up competing against the dead.
Competing against the dead.
Yeah.
Wow. That's a chilling thought.
It is. And we saw a really powerful real-world example of this tension recently. Robin Williams' daughter, Zelda Williams.
Oh, right. I remember this.
She spoke out very strongly against an AI recreation of her father's voice, called it disturbing, said it steals the human element.
And didn't Robin Williams himself have something in his will about his image?
He did. Reportedly, a clause forbidding the use of his image for 25 years after his death, which is really telling.
Absolutely.
And that whole situation, it just throws into sharp relief this urgent need for new norms, maybe even new laws around posthumous digital identity. Who really controls a celebrity's avatar after they're gone? Is a super convincing AI actually her in any meaningful way? And how does this affect how we grieve, how we remember? The general consensus among ethicists seems to be that these simulations, they have to be handled with extreme transparency and respect. Always framed as an homage, right? Never positioned as a replacement for the actual person.
An homage, not a replacement. That seems key. But it still raises so many questions about what it means to be human when our digital selves can potentially live on or be created after we're gone.
Exactly.
And sort of related to that, our sources also dig into privacy and surveillance concerns. With these incredibly immersive experiences, what's the trade-off we're making as users?
That's a huge one. The trade-off often is that these immersive platforms get a really a deep window, as some experts put it, into our lives.
Deeper than just tracking clicks, presumably.
Oh, way deeper. VR headsets, AR glasses, they track much more. Your physical movements, biometrics maybe, facial expressions, even where your eyes are looking, your gaze.
Wow.
Digital rights experts warn quite clearly, quote, surveillance will follow us into the metaverse, and our bodies could be the new data source.
Our bodies as the data source.
Yeah. And think about soul machines. Again, they actually tout that digital Marilyn analyzes your preferences and tailors her responses, which sounds great for personalization.
But it's also deep data collection in real time.
Precisely. It's happening constantly based on your interaction.
Yeah, it's a lot to process, isn't it?
Yeah.
This level of data collection, it naturally sparks serious worries. Who owns that data? Could it be used to manipulate us, our buying habits, maybe even political views? Just the sheer amount of monitoring. And what about identity theft, like deep fakes, but in real-time 3D?
These are all valid, pressing concerns, and experts are definitely calling for solutions. Things like much stronger encryption, giving users genuine control over their own data and their avatars, and likely developing entirely new legal frameworks specifically designed to protect our virtual selves.
Yeah.
You really do have to stop and think, what happens to the personal things, the private property that you share with an AI like digital Marilyn? Who owns that conversation, and how could it potentially be used down the line?
It's a crucial question. Okay, so stepping back, looking ahead, what does all this mean for Marilyn's actual legacy, in the coming years? Our sources seem to paint this picture of experiential nostalgia.
Yeah, I think that's a good term for it. It means we could see possibilities like, imagine stepping into a scene from like It Hot. Not just watching it, but being a participant somehow.
Wow.
Or maybe engaging in collaborative role play on a recreated movie set. And as we discussed, fans displaying their Marilyn NFT art in virtual homes that other fans can actually visit. It basically transforms these digital assets into a kind of living, interactive museum of her influence, but within the metaverse itself.
Okay. And how realistic could these interactions actually become? Are we talking about experiences that feel genuinely convincing?
Well, the technologists are working incredibly fast on improving these virtual human avatars. They're constantly pushing to cross that uncanny valley, that point where something looks almost human, but it just feels off.
Right. Creepy.
Exactly. The goal is to achieve genuinely natural-seeming emotion and interaction, and if they get there, well, interacting with a digital Marilyn could start to feel surreally close to a real encounter.
Surreal is the word.
We might even see things like official Marilyn Monroe Metaverse experiences, maybe sanctioned directly by her estate, acting as these new kinds of community hubs that blend fan clubs, theme parks, maybe even archives, all into one digital space.
It feels like this could be a completely new canvas for exploring all the different sides of Marilyn's persona. She wasn't just one thing, right? The fashion icon, the intellectual, the movie star, the vulnerable person.
Absolutely. And the metaverse could allow those different facets to be experienced in really rich interactive ways. You could imagine virtual spaces dedicated just to her fashion influence, or interactive exhibits exploring her reading habits, her intellectual side, which often gets overlooked, while her films maybe play in a virtual cinema for new generations.
So it's not about replacing the real Marilyn.
No, definitely not. It's more about keeping her memory vibrant, adapting her story for contemporary mediums, which, in a way, is an extension of what we've always done with figures we admire, right? Build monuments, write biographies, make documentaries. Now it's just becoming interactive.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So as we move into this new era, as users, as creators, what responsibility do we all carry when it comes to these digital legacies?
Yeah, it really brings us back to that core tension, the balance between innovation and respect. While the tech companies and the estates, they genuinely seem to aim to honor these artists, not just exploit them. It's really up to the public, up to the fans to build up to that promise. We need to learn from the kind of unease people like Zelda Williams expressed to approach this whole idea of digital resurrection with empathy, with caution, and to always remember that a virtual Marilyn, no matter how charming or convincing she might become, is ultimately, well, it's a complex algorithm. It's designed to evoke a human connection, but it isn't the human herself.
A complex algorithm. It's important to keep that in mind. So as we start to wrap up this deep dive, it feels really clear that the future for cultural icons like Marilyn Monroe in the Metaverse is, well, it's both incredibly thrilling and profoundly complex.
It really is. And maybe a final thought to leave you with is, what would Marilyn herself have thought about all this?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Right. Would she have jumped into her own virtual avatar's shoes, delighted to perform for a whole new kind of adoring digital crowd? Or would she maybe have cautioned us, reminded us about the crucial difference between the image, which she knew so much about manipulating, and the actual human being behind it, emphasizing that unique, irreplaceable spark of human experience?
It's fascinating to speculate. Maybe in that speculative spirit, one day we'll actually get to pose that very question to her AI.
And get an answer.
Yeah, and maybe hear an answer that has her signature mix of, wit and warmth.
Wouldn't that be something?
What seems certain, though, is that Marilyn's legacy, like the legacies of so many icons, is just going to keep evolving with every new technological leap. The Metaverse, it's simply the next frontier for our collective cultural imagination, isn't it?
Definitely that way.
So as you, the listener, navigate this evolving space, remember you carry Marilyn's story with you, ensuring that whether it was in old Hollywood or maybe someday in a virtual realm, her light somehow still shines on.